Randy. Brandy Scotchford, no wait. Handy Spagfoot, no. Randolph Pitchfoot, god damn it. Randy Pitchford is a name that many of you might have heard of, and even more of you might know about the sneaky, subtle, and sometimes sexy things this man has gotten up to in his time. So wake yourself up. No, seriously. Hello?
Wake up.
Wake yourself up. And grab a coffee as we dive into the most controversial man in Borderlands. His official title is, and let me just go to the most trustworthy and accurate site this species has ever heard of, Wikipedia. The president and CEO of the Gearbox Entertainment Company and president of Gearbox Studios. Wow, that is one way of saying you're up your own ass. Mr. Randall Pastforce, in layman's terms, is basically the reason that all of the amazing games in the Borderlands franchise exist. But he's also the reason that all of the shitty games in the Borderlands franchise exist. Oh yeah, and Battleborn, remember that? Fuck non-Team Fortress 2 based shooters. All my homies hate non-Team Fortress 2 team-based shooters. He's the co-founder of a tiny little game studio you might have heard of called Gearbox Software, which he, Brian Martel, Stephen Ball, Landon Montgomery, and Rob Hieronymus created in the good old days of 1999, only a few short months before the world would apparently explode and all of the clocks was rise up Terminator 2 style, meaning Randy needed to get the Terminator T-800 played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Before all that though, Randy had to be born, like most of us. I said most, not all. Birthed on the 21st of April 1971, which is way too close to my dad's day of birth by the way, Randy had seemingly always been surrounded by technology as a kid. His dad, who worked in the United States intelligence system, came home one day with a computer that he had made himself, and later decided to give Randy a very own computer, at only age 7, in 1978. Lucky fuck. He grew up on it, and through the years of training and practice, managed to emulate the arcade games of the time. He even wrote his first actual game at only 11 years old, which was very impressive, especially for the time. In an interview, Randy said he played Colossal Cave Adventure and was so enamored by the game that he used a hex editor to examine the code and figure out some of the programming concepts behind him. So basically, he's a tech nerd. Randacles has always had a keen interest in magic, and embarrassing himself in front of thousands of fans who actually don't care about his magic tricks but wanted to see a trailer for Borderlands 3 so bad they were willing to endure 10 minutes of torture for a 5-second clip of Moses' back. Pitchford's great uncle was Richard Valentine Pitchford, a British magician under the stage name Cardini. Of course, Randy took a liking to his uncle very much, and after being gifted his books at a very young age, became enamoured in the concept. Whilst still retaining the interest he had for playing and developing video games, he also decided he wanted to continue to pursue magic as a possible career path moving forward. In fact, he managed to fund his education through the magic business. Personally, I don't get how he couldn't just make $1 million magically appear under his hat, but fuck me, I guess. As recent as 2016, he even purchased Jenny, the top publication for magic and magicians, and in April 2022 was in the final stages of acquiring the Magic Castle. So yeah, he takes his magic he takes his magic way too seriously. So, moving from Randy Pitchford the magician to the one that most people know him for, which is Randy Pitchford the game developer. So, where did he actually start his career? Well, Randy was part of a small studio named 3D Realms, and worked on some pretty iconic games, such as Duke Nukem 3D, that's the one that didn't suck by the way, and Shadow Warrior. So it wasn't like he was involved with small projects before co-founding Gearbox, not at all, almost like the opposite in actual fact. But after that, he decided he wanted to work on something different, which is why he and his friends founded Gearbox in 1999. Initially working on expansions for Valve's Half-Life games, he and his team developed or helped develop every Half-Life expansion game or port, including Opposing Force, Blue Shift, Half-Life for the PlayStation 2, including Half-Life Decay, Counter-Strike Condition Zero, and Half-Life for the Sega Dreamcast. All my homies hate the Sega Dreamcast. After a few years of taking it from the rear by Valve, in more ways than one, they decided to move on from making games where you shoot hostile military things that speak in a completely different language to you to a game where you shoot hostile military things that speak a completely different language to you. Anyway, they managed to make their very own product that people actually enjoyed and wanted to play. Brothers in Arms: Road to Hill 30 released on the Xbox, PC and PlayStation 2, and with the newfound success, later that year released a sequel, Brothers in Arms: Earned in Blood. In 2008, Brothers in Arms: Hell's Highway was released to high critics and audience reviews. But fuck all that, we're here to hear about the only thing people actually care about: Gearbox, Randy Password, and Borderlands. Whilst the original Brothers in Arms was high-rolling in the success, Randy Pitchford said he had an idea for a first-person game called Borderlands. The reason was, he loved playing RPG games like Diablo and Ultima, role-playing games by the way, not rocket-propelled grenade. With working on the Half-Life games and Duke Nukem, he was also not only interested, but has also previously been involved with developing first-person shooters, and had an idea of what to make his new cross-hybrid shooter PGRP shooter sharp. The game was initially pitched to the company as Halo meets Diablo, and with Randy selling his team on the idea, they took a lunch, ate a coffee, drank a shit, and got to work for the next 2 years. During the early phase, and after realising they just made a huge bathroom-based mistake, Pitchford undertook the task of persuading his team about the concept of the FPS RPG hybrid. Once again, need to clarify, we're not talking about the feet per second that a rocket-propelled grenade can go. God, what is wrong with you? Gradually, it became clear that the FPS genre would be the game's defining classification. Initially, the game's visual style leaned towards the realism aspect, drawing inspiration in part from the Gears of War and Mass Effect series that were really popular at the time. As the team grew in size, preparations were made for the game's inaugural public reveal in September 2007 through a feature on Game Informer's cover story. Subsequent trailers were scheduled to debut at the following year's E3 and other gaming events. Oh my god, remember when E3 existed? And a certain virus didn't? And the world was green and full of daisies and rainbows and fairy dust. The original realism, which imparted a predominantly brown and subdued colour palette, seriously, look at the trailer. Actually, you don't even need to go look it up, here it is right now. If you've never seen that before, you're like, what the hell? Yeah, that's what it used to look like, guys. You're glad that it turned out the way it did, eh? At this time, the game had already reached a completion level of around 75%, and the studio had a specific release window in their sights. Prospect of scrapping significant components of the game was ruled out. Brian Martle, the chief creative officer, recounts that the team made a deliberate effort to identify their purple cow, a distinctive visual component that would set their game apart and drive sales upwards. Martel and a small, discreet group dedicated time to craft a prototype featuring an art style akin to cell shading. You can probably see where this is going. This was done without sharing any of this development with the wider team, in order to avoid potential discontent among the other staff members. Pitchford later acknowledged that this fresh artistic direction was not entirely original to Gearbox, and acknowledged its partial inspiration from Ben Hibbin's short film, Code Hunters. Although Gearbox did reach out to Hibbin with the prospect of potential collaboration on Borderlands artwork, these discussions fell through eventually. When the new direction that the team had been secretly working on was showed to the wider team, basically everyone was pleased with it. Not only the originality of the work, but also how it managed to separate itself from other games at the time. I mean, literally just look at any other game around that time, it was all just dusty, abandoned space world, but this one was dusty, abandoned space world with black lines on the outside of it. Not everyone was happy though. The original art director that had been involved with the game was so disappointed in the fact that all of her work was essentially thrown away, that she straight up just said, "Fuck you, gaming industry," and never involved herself with any video game ever again. It's kinda sad. I mean, she acted like a bit of a pussy, but also sad, mostly it's sad. Just want to take a break real fast and remind y'all that the button down there still says subscribe and not subscribed there. So if you could just change that real quick, that'd be great, thanks. Just gonna wait for a sec. Oh, you've done it. Oh, cheers, babes. As you could have probably guessed, unless you live in 2006, Borderlands and all of its sequels enjoyed years of critical acclaim, massive success, and many titles. But over the years, cracks started to show. Just tiny ones at first, but eventually it would make for a very controversial few years for the Borderlands franchise, and specifically Mr. Pitchford. Let's get on to my favourite part, and probably what you're all here for anyway, the outrageous and funky as fuck controversies this man has been involved with in recent years. The first and probably most mad one that I've even heard of involving the CEO of Gearbox, by the way, is the infamous The Medieval Times incident. God. Former general counsel for the company, Wade Callender, sued Gearbox in 2019, alleging that Pitchford left a USB drive at the restaurant that contained sensitive company data as well as CP. Don't know what CP is then? I'm sorry that you landed on this video, you poor soul. On top of that, it was alleged that there had been a $12 million bonus from Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Gearbox, meant for Borderlands 2, that Pitchford just decided he deserved and pocketed all of it. The lawsuit was dismissed in October 2019, accompanied by a statement that the evidence exonerated Pitchford of the allegations against him. Some say trial by media, some say he's a CEO of a massive company, so of course he's going to get away with it, but you be the judge. Another super spicy one, by the way, that you may have never even heard of, is the fate of aliens colonial marines. Yeah, Angry Joe has definitely heard of this one. If you know, you know. In order to meet the deadline for the game, Sega hired Gearbox to help finish the game in time. The game that was released was absolute shit and a complete dog show for everyone involved, leaving many fans disappointed in what was ultimately a critical and commercial fail. That sadness turned to anger when a little birdie claimed Pitchford siphoned money that Sega gave to his company and used it to help fund the Borderlands team. Naughty, naughty indeed. What gets me with these two specifically is like how shady and scummy the whole money that was supposed to go somewhere mysteriously disappears and ends up in Randy's pockets. Ooh. Once again though, only allegations. Nothing ever came from it. One of the most noticeable changes to the Borderlands franchise, as of recent years, we could probably all agree, at least with characters, is the replacement of the voice actor who actually played Claptrap, David Eddings. He didn't return for the iconic role he had been playing for over 11 years, and this got people talking, right? Pitchford himself even took to Twitter to say it was a mutual decision, but things changed when Eddings spoke up, revealing he refused because he wasn't being paid for the performance. If that isn't mad enough as is, Eddings accused the Gearbox CEO of physically assaulting him at GDC 2017. Randy defended himself on Twitter, saying David was just bitter about having been terminated and that the actor had refused the compensation they offered. This one for me was sort of like when it seemed the Borderlands franchise was slowly pulling away at the small cracks they already had and were making them a lot larger. And especially since this was now public information and had people talking about it for a very long time after it had all suddenly ended. And of course, the CEO of a massive company has treated his employees like shit financially and verbally. Allegedly, for legal reasons. Allegedly. Like, at this point, I feel like every CEO has been in some hot water for shit they've done or said to employees at some point, right? Am I wrong? The company uses profit sharing, in which employees are paid the absolute minimum, but receive massive payouts when the game ships and copies are sold. Normally, because Gearbox games sell quite well, that works fine. However, Borderlands 3 was both more expensive to make and apparently sold less than was projected. Gearbox has previously told employees to be prepared to receive a payout in the tune of 6 figures, but realised later that wasn't going to be likely. Pitchford told employees they were welcome to leave the company if they didn't like the situation. A dick! It's always something I notice with CEOs of massive companies, especially companies that grow to be so large. Like, look at Twitter, or RIP Twitter, look at X, look at Facebook, look at Microsoft, look at Apple, all these companies, right? The CEO is just always in controversy. It's either for being a dick to their employees, it's for doing something terrible that's against human rights or something similar, or they have completely forgot what it's like to just be a normal human being. Like, you see it all the time, these companies that start up and they're this small little tech company, like started out of a garage or whatever, or like this car company that started in this guy's back garden. And they always seem like they're like humble people, you know, they're just humans or whatever. And then they always get rich, sell their soul to aliens or whatever, and then fuck off up their massive skyscrapers and be dicks to their employees. It seems like it's a formula that just keeps on working, you know. And it's happened with these guys as well, you know. I feel like some CEOs do get, you know, a bit abused. They're the punching bag because they're the head of the company. But you know, honestly, most of them are just assholes. And it seems to be the same here with Mr. Prandy Richford. And there's something else I always notice with these type of controversies, especially when it includes a really rich person, or like a really big CEO. They always just seem to disappear very conveniently after a few months, you know. Like, the same thing's going on with Diablo 4 right now. People will say something shit about the game after the game's come out. It'll be a massive controversy for a few months, and then it'll just sink. You'll just completely forget about it. I don't know if that's just because of the culture that the internet has brewed as of late, but things seem to just move super fast. It seems like with memes don't end, they end after a few weeks. Controversies end after a few weeks, and some people just let people forget about this type of stuff. I mean, even just as recent as last year, there's an article that came out by the Gamer talking about Randy Pitchford just winning an award for the best CEO. I mean, seriously, after all I've just talked about, he's won the best CEO award. And it's talking about here, Randy Pitchford of USB Stick Full of P and Company Secrets fame has won an award for best corporate CEO by Texas Group Tech Titans. Like, huh? Man, my candles smell nice. Yeah, you guys ever get that? Just like occasionally get a whiff of a candle and you're like, damn, I picked a good candle. No? Okay. And even with all the personal drama he's had going on, like, bro, who are you hiring to write these games? I feel like new Tales from the Borderlands made me legitimately want to see what it was like to be Helen Keller permanently. I'm genuinely confused how something like that would even be allowed to ship. And not even that, Randy can stand there in an interview for the new game, laughing and smiling, saying he loved the original game, whilst knowing in the back of his head that this new Tales is absolutely fucking nothing like the original game and shits all over its predecessor in all of the wrong ways. Something inside me makes me feel like Randy has burned so many bridges with all the old Borderlands devs. You know, the ones that actually made good games and the ones that actually made the Borderlands franchise what it is. It's to the point where barely anyone who worked on 1, 2, or even the pre-sequel is even around anymore. Of course, I could be wrong, but there is just something in my mind that makes me think that's the legitimate reason for all of the recent slop that has been passed for a quote-unquote story in recent times. Randy Pitchford is a character who always managed, and I predict to continue to manage, ending up embroiled in controversy one way or the other. Doesn't matter if it's back and forth on Twitter, dodgy dealings, or just simply being a dick to his staff like most CEOs are known for. I suspect people will be talking about him for years. Whether that be good or bad is yet to be seen, but with the new Borderlands movie coming out very soon, we probably won't have to wait very long. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to do all that subscribe, notification stuff. You know how it works. You've been on the platform for probably a while now. And I will see you in the next video, guys. Peace.